Naveen, Niranjan, Pavitra and Varsha here, who will be helping me to answer some of your queries, especially related to administration part. So let us talk about one of the topics. If you remember, the first topic is about organizational leadership. Now let me provide you, see, as a professional, as a quality professional, you have to develop a systems approach. You are like a quality leader, right? So you have to develop systems thinking. Now, what do you mean by systems thinking? So let me talk a little bit about what is systems thinking. Just give me 1 minute. Just got the pen on which I can use my whiteboard to explain these things to you much more easily. So when you are looking at, think of your own organization. It could be a clinic, it could be an educational institute, or it could be a lab, or it could be a hospital. So if you think in terms of your organization, through a series of steps, you deliver an output. Yeah. Through a series of steps, you deliver an output. And actually, I'm making a model which is applicable to all the organizations in the world, not necessarily your organization, all the organizations in the world. And from healthcare perspective, of course, the output here is, see, output could be either a service or it could be a product. Product means, sometimes a prescription, yeah, or sometimes a medicine, yeah, or service. Service is treatment, consultation. So the output is treatment or consultation, and this output is received by a customer. Yeah, output is received by a customer. Yeah. So we have process steps. Let's say step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, step number 4. So if you are a lab, you have got basic 4 to 5 steps in which you collect the samples, process the samples, deliver a report to the patient. Patient is the customer, or the family members of the patient could be the customers. Obviously, you require certain inputs which needs to be processed. Inputs could be information. Inputs could be, like if you're a lab, then let's say chemical reagents are different. Then the skill of the people, the staff, and all these are inputs to your process. If you're a hospital, let's say discharge process for a patient, discharge process, patient discharge process in a hospital. If you take an example of that, it also has a series of steps which delivers an output, and output is patient discharge of the patient. So these process steps, series of process steps, what is the basic definition of a process? The basic definition of a process is that it is series of steps done again and again, repeated again and again. That is the basic definition of a process. Series of steps which are performed again and again and again and again, multiple times. That is a process. Now, these customers have something to say. So you have a feedback from the customers. And sometimes you can also have a demand from the customers, not necessarily verbal demand, but that, let's say, for example, during COVID-19, we could predict the demand of healthcare services in our city or by our hospital. So you have to predict the demand of the services provided by you. Yeah. And based on the feedback which you receive from your customers, and based on the demand predicted, your governing board, your planning team, your scheduling or planning or strategy team would instruct the suppliers, to provide the relevant inputs. And also they will instruct the relevant departments about the policies and procedures and the standard operating procedures which need to be followed in order to satisfy the demands of the customer, so that customer is happy. Now, please remember, customer may not be necessarily always a patient. It could be Ministry of Health too. It could be the regulatory body also. So we are talking about overall systems thinking. And this diagram, which I have just made, is known as systems map. And developing this type of thought process is known as systems thinking, given by Dr. Edward Deming. Dr. Edward Deming was a quality guru, is a very well-known quality guru, and he gave us the concept of systems thinking. Another name for this map is also known as value stream map, how the value is created in our organization. So the whole idea is to create the values for the customers. And please understand, customers can be external customer or internal customer. The concept of internal customer is very much important in the CPHQ syllabus. So just to give an example, customers, obviously the external customer here would mean patient or the family of the patients or the, let's say, government or Ministry of Health. But internal customers, what do we mean by that? So department number 3 is internal customer of department number 2. When a doctor prescribes a blood test for the patient, a physician becomes a customer. See, sometimes a customer could be the supplier as well. So here, when the blood test is received by, or let's say, when the patient goes to the lab, and the lab collects the sample, right? And the lab processes it and sends it back to the physician. The physician is the internal customer of the lab, right? When you are, let's say you are going to a reception. The reception is, collecting all the relevant data related to your, if you have insurance, you have got your name, etc., other credentials. And the internal customer of the reception would be, let's say if a person is consulting for OPD consulting, so the OPD would be the internal customer of the reception area. So you have to develop the concept of internal customers. You have to also satisfy the internal customers as well as the external customers. And in order to satisfy internal as well as external customer, you have to create value from them. Every customer is looking for some value. So you have to identify that value. And once you know this is how the value flows in my system, your concept, your thought process changes, your mindset changes. And that becomes that of a leader. It is not silo-based thinking. It is not that, well, I belong to department 2 and let me focus only on department 2. No. I'm having a systems thinking. I'm having a systems approach. And that is what you have to develop as a CPHQ professional. So there are 5 levels of leadership. This actually is a very interesting video. Rather than showing this video, I'll be happy to give you the link of this video, because I would rather, have a live interaction with you. But this video is something which talks about 5 levels of leadership. Maybe I will just play a part of it just for your.
If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are on the path to becoming a great leader. In this generation where technology has become so advanced that it is available to everyone, the only competitive edge a company can get is by improving its leadership. How important a good leader is can be explained using the examples of many companies that rose to skyrocketing heights because they had great leaders. According to Forbes, companies like General Electric, Procter & Gamble, Intel, Siemens, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, ABB, Microsoft, Walmart, etc. are good examples of companies for great leadership. Now the question arises, how does leadership sets the benchmark for the company to yourself at least once? Just how a parent shapes for great leadership. Now the question arises, how does leadership influence organizational culture? I'm sure all of you have asked this question to yourself at least once. Just how a parent shapes the characteristics of a child, or just how a teacher builds the foundation for her students. A good leader sets the benchmark for the company and its people. With good leadership, a company can grow and achieve its goals, at the same time create a healthy environment for its employees, thereby improving employee efficiency. A team can grow only up to the level of its leader. It cannot go beyond it. So the level of the leader decides the performance of the team. We now know that leadership is important. So how do we inculcate good leadership practices? Let me tell you about John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. The first level is position. This is the lowest level of leadership. As one can say, it's the entry level of the leadership. The position is the only level that requires no effort to achieve. One can simply be appointed at a leadership position. Now there is nothing wrong with having the leadership position. However, relying only on this position to get people to follow you will not take you far. Position does not directly result in influence. You should use this level as a place to invest in your growth as a leader. This time can be used to learn to lead yourself through priorities and self-discipline. Level 2 is permission, which is based on relationships. Here the people choose to follow you because they want to and not simply because they have to. In simple terms, at this level, people give you the permission to lead them. If you want to grow at this level, you will need to learn to know the people you are leading and connect with them. If you treat your people as individuals who have their own values and beliefs, you begin to develop a positive relationship with them. Trust grows, mutual respect increases, and the work environment becomes positive and happy to work in. This is the level where solid, lasting relationships are built that create the foundation for the next level. Level 3 is production. In life, there will be times when people hit rock bottom and they feel there is no way out. This is when true leadership comes to rescue. Great leaders know how to motivate people. Getting things done is what level 3 is all about. To build influence and credibility, results must be visible. If you want people to follow you, not only because of your relationship with them, but also because of your credibility, then you must give them something to prove your worth. This is the level where leaders can become change agents. The more output you give, the more you'll be able to tackle tough problems. Work becomes fun as everyone is moving together and the team rises to another level of effectiveness. Level 4 is people development. To sum up level 4 in one word, it can be called the reproduction level. A great leader is not someone who rises on the top alone. A great leader is someone who produces more great leaders. Your goal at this level is to identify and develop as many leaders as you can by investing time and effort and helping them grow. When there are more great leaders, the organization will accomplish more. By doing this, you are giving your people another reason to follow you. When they see what you have done for your team members personally, respect, trust, and admiration increases. And level 5 is pinnacle. This is the highest level of leadership, which also makes it most difficult to attain. You simply cannot reach level 5 unless you are willing to invest your life into the lives of others. But if you stick with it, you may find yourself at the pinnacle. Level 5 leaders develop level 5 organizations. They aim to create opportunities that other leaders don't. They create a legacy in what they do. People follow them because of who they are and what they represent. As a result, level 5 leaders often transcend their position and even their organization. One thing you must note here is the goal of John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership is not to advance from one level to another, but it is to build upon each level. I would like to end with a very famous quote by John Maxwell. Leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. Stay happy and keep learning.
Now, let me talk about some of the basic concepts. So we just talked, we had a brief overview of what leadership is, how important it is, and how to engage leadership, change management. Well, today I'm not going to discuss that much about those topics, but as I told you earlier, because we have people, some of the people have got a basic understanding of quality. Some of them have got a little bit of no understanding of about quality tools and techniques. So in order to progress a little further, let me give you a brief, very brief introduction about what do we call as lean, or what do you call as basic quality tools like cause and effect diagram, why the data analytics is important, what is the importance of data, etc. And if my time permits, even I will take you further to control charts, etc. And if you are willing to stay on for more, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions even after 2 hours of training completion. So you have typical hospital environment, high volume, high variation, high speed, high stress, high turnover, highly regulated. Healthcare industry is one of the highly regulated industry. It produces lots of service breakdowns, wasteful processes, and medical errors. Let me focus on today. Let me focus on wasteful processes. So what is lean? Lean is about war and waste. Identify the wasteful steps in your systems. See, when you are looking at your system, now let me take you back to the system. When you are delivering the value, you are delivering it through processes and through process steps. Some of the steps are adding value and some of the steps are not adding value. So most of us will think, well, every step is adding value. No, not always. Many things are happening which are not part of your standard operating procedure. Many things are taking place in your hospital which are not directly responsible for delivering value. One of them is just moving around, transportation, motion, searching, looking for items, looking for information, waiting for another department to complete their job so that I can start my job. These are all known as wasteful activities. If the speed of, say, process 1 is fast and number 2 is slow, what will happen? There would be a waiting line, waiting queue developed because 2 is slow, 1 is fast. So every step should be of equal, we call it stack time. Everything should be balanced. So you have to design a process so that all the steps are balanced. Then there is no waiting time in between. See, waiting time is a waste. Or sometimes we call it as inventory. Inventory, like we got lots and lots of stocks of medicines which generally get expired. This is all waste for the hospital, right? Any information which is not needed, but we still collect, it's waste. So there's a lot of waste in our system, and we have to develop an eye to identify that waste. And that is what is known as non-value added activity. Waste is also known as muda. And using some of the simple techniques of say lean concepts, you can improve your processes. So let me very quickly talk about it further. And So these are the typical waste of intelligence of the surgeon. Surgeon is waiting for the operation theater to get ready. That is waste of intelligence. Waiting, inventory, motion, transportation, overproduction, overprocessing. These are all examples of waste. Some of the wastes are obvious, like waiting time, but some of the wastes are not obvious. They are hidden wastes, right? A typical blood test process, not necessarily in the technically correct way of presenting, but I'm just trying to give you a very brief overview. You'll find that walking to outpatient is OPD is not adding any value. What is the value we are looking at? We are looking at the value of what is the value patient is looking at, or the physician is looking at from the blood test? He's looking at the status of health. I want to know the status of health of the patient, and that is the value. Now, walking to OPD, registering in OPD, walking to lab, they are all not adding any value, unfortunately. You will say, well, person has to register. No, why? It is not adding any direct value. Can we eliminate the registration, or can we shorten that process? So try to shorten or minimize non-value-added activities in the process. And that's what you'll have a wasteful hospital where a lot of waste of intelligence like this is there. 80% of the nurse calls are housekeeping in nature. Means my pillow cover is dirty, my bed sheet is dirty. No, nurse is not there to take care of these aspects. Nurse is there to nurse the patient and to provide the right medicine. But if you are involving or wasting the intelligence of the nurse in those activities, which can be done by someone else, it is known as waste of intelligence. I just wanted to briefly cover, today, I will like to cover more of data part. So let me go through these cases very quickly. By just identifying the non-value-added activities in our system, one hospital doubled the cardiology lab capacity from 8 to 16. Work was redesigned without adding staff or buying new technology. They could achieve that. One hospital, problem had the patients had to wait up to 6 days between the cardiologist exam conducted in the doctor's office and the treadmill exam conducted in the diagnostics lab. Now you'll be surprised to know that our processes are like that. They are designed in keeping view of the hospital staff, and ease of operations for hospital staff rather than patients. So after observing the flow of patients from the cardiologist office to the diagnostic lab, two physicians decided to see the patients in diagnostic lab. Now patients make appointments to see the cardiologist there. And the daily schedule for diagnostic exams was changed so patients could get both exams done on the same day. So drastically it reduced exam time from 2,700 minutes to almost 64 minutes, almost 1 hour. Similarly, we could cut admission from 17 minutes to 5 minutes, and one hospital reduced the signature or steps from 18 to 12. And every approval, we say, you may feel that approvals are necessary, but try to reduce the approvals. Approvals are actually not adding any value. Well, I can't emphasize too much upon that, or I can't elaborate on that. Many of you might be having questions. If you have any questions, you can ask in the chat box at any time. I'll be happy to answer these questions. So we have got a typical patient flow process, and we identify which of the steps are value added and which of the steps are non-value added. Let me give an example of some non-value added activities in the hospital. Unnecessary process or motion, unnecessary stocks or production, errors, unnecessary transportation, unnecessary waiting. These are all examples of waste. A person who's not fully utilized is a waste. An equipment not fully utilized is a waste. On a funny note, or in lighter vein, cost of a 5-minute MD walk, yeah, it costs money. Even walk to elevator, elevator wait, elevator travel, walk to lab or pharmacy, nurse cost per hour is, if US is $50, the cost of one trip becomes $5, cost of 5 trips per day per nurse becomes $25, cost of elevator wait per day per nurse is $12.5. Multiplied by 200 nurses, if you're a large hospital, multiplied by 300 days, you can imagine the kind of waste. lab and pharmacy on second floor and radiation equipment on ground floor. Why don't we bring them all on one floor, which reduces the waste of motion or transportation, or exam room interruption, which again wastes a lot of time. And also to reduce the errors, why don't we use visual controls? Some of the visual controls can prevent the errors to a large extent. Using the visual controls, indented surgical instrument tray, just to in order not we don't forget anything. The visual hospitals is a hospital where people and patients don't have to seek directions. They don't have to ask directions. It should be as visual as possible. People should be able to get their answers by looking around. It reduces a lot of waste or time wasted by asking the questions. Mistake proofing is another concept. Just to take an example, just to tell you what is mistake proofing. Mistake proofing is also known as pokayoke in Japanese. Even by mistake, you should not commit a mistake. It's also known as fool proofing. Even a foolish person cannot commit a mistake. Like in rice cooker, it automatically switches off after some time. Even by mistake, you will not burn ice. So for example, if you're talking about, let me give some examples here. In robust process design, the smart machines. So machines cannot be set or operated beyond normal, safe, or maximum levels, volume, intensity, or time. Yeah. Smart heparin infusion pumps are some examples. Abnormal values cannot be entered. They'll be rejected. Again, these are examples of pokayoke or mistake proofing. You can't connect oxygen to nitrogen cylinder because the connections are different. Again, an example of pokayoke or mistake proofing. And some more examples: fixed number of packages during surgery, complete catheter kits for insertion, and pre-packaged medication cart with correct doses. These are some of the examples. Okay, now let me take you to the data analytics part. Do you agree that some data, some things can be measured and something cannot be measured? What do you think? Do you agree with that? You can answer yes or no. Yes. Do you agree with there are some things which cannot be measured and something can be measured? Well, some of you are saying yes, some of you are saying no. Actually, you have to disagree. You can't improve if you cannot measure, and you can measure everything. That is rule number 2. And rule number three is, if you think something cannot be measured, go back to rule number 2. That means everything can be measured. So when we talk about data, usually there are 3 responses. Some people say we do not collect the data, or sometimes it's a one way of saying that I don't want to give you the data because maybe you will collect the data from me and then you will project the performance of my department in some meeting and I don't like it. Or we have too much of data, they say. Well, but I don't know what to do with that because we don't know data analytics. In CPHQ syllabus, you learn a lot of data analysis. Analysis is too complicated, they say. Sometimes you will say. So because I'm not a statistician, I hate mathematics, these are some of the excuses. These excuses are no longer valid because there are all nowadays softwares available and the tools and techniques available which can very easily process your data. So don't have to worry about it. Now let me tell you how we can measure everything. There are 2 types of data: continuous data and attribute data. Continuous data is something which can be represented on a number line. Number line is something which is, extending from minus infinity to plus infinity. So when you are looking at the number line, minus infinity to plus infinity means any point on the number line. That is a continuous line. That is why we call it as continuous scale, continuous line. So 55.5 days. 55.5 days. This is a continuous data. One another way of identifying type of data is usually it has a unit. Like days, it has a unit, right? Centimeters, blood pressure. These are examples of continuous data. Usually it may have a possibility, that is having a possibility of a decimal point. Yeah. And for such data, only 30 to 50 sample is good enough to make a full judgment about the whole population. You'll be surprised to know that. But it is true. 30 to 40, 50 samples is good enough. So if I want to know the average height of, or the range of 95% range of average height of a infant, or let's say a child, child who's 5 years old. So if I collect 30 samples, 30 healthy children sample at random, I can get the average and a band. And I'll tell you how to calculate the band in a short while. But a band which you can say that I'm 99% sure the height of a 5-year-old child is between this range to this range. Or human height for adult. I just collect 30, 40 samples and I can I can measure the average, and I can measure something called a standard deviation, and I can make a prediction about a large population of 1 million, 10 million, or sometimes billions. So that is power of 30 to 40 samples of continuous data. Attribute data is that data which we feel cannot be measured, like happiness. Sometimes we say happiness cannot be measured, right? So in such situations, whenever we feel something cannot be measured, the best way to measure is create categories. You can create categories. Like happy, not happy, right? So as I was telling you, there are two types of data. Continuous data and attribute data. And attribute. Continuous, I think you have understood. Waiting time of a patient, discharge time of a patient. Well, I have got some time, good time with me. What I can try to show you is a little bit of analysis also I'll try to show you, so that I can, you can see some of the tools in action. In such a short time of 2 hours, I can't teach you all the tools in detail, but at least you'll get a glimpse of like a histogram, cause and effect diagram, Pareto chart, scatter plot, all these things. You'll get a glimpse of those graphs and charts, which are, of course, these are one of the difficult topics, which people find it difficult. They find it difficult. They are not at all difficult topics. They find it difficult, and sometimes people say that they fail because of that data analytics portion of our of the CPHQ syllabus. Well, we are masters in that. Masters in what? Masters in statistical analysis. So we prepare you well for data analytics. Just a minute, let me see if I can get a project data related to patient discharge time. Yeah, let's see. So as I explain the things, I can also show you, as we learn some tools and techniques, I will also show these tools and techniques in action, so that your understanding will be better, because in such a short time, to learn about these tools, best way to learn is to see those tools in action, and you will get a very big picture about all these tools and techniques. And that's the idea of this 2 hours duration training. We are not going to go into the details of any particular tool or explaining those tools, but giving an overview of those tools, which you will learn in CPHQ syllabus. Yeah. So now let us first learn, and then after that, we will apply. Whatever we learn, we will apply to a case study. So continuous data, I think patient discharge time, I can say is a continuous data, patient discharge time. And today, let us say it is 5 hours, or in terms of minutes, it's 300 minutes. So because it can take a number of 300.6 minutes also, by definition, it becomes a continuous data. Attribute data is something which we feel is difficult to measure. Let's say happiness. Now, to measure anything, and I'm giving you a trick, because a lot of you might be involved in developing KPIs. And it's a very tough topic. Sometimes people feel, oh, this is very difficult. KPIs, this topic itself is like, sometimes people run away from it. How to develop KPI. By the way, we conduct KPI sessions also. We have got another training where we teach almost the same thing what I'm teaching you right now. What is the best way to measure anything? Please create categories of that attribute. So if I, instead of writing happiness here, let me write that attribute which I want to measure. So you'll get a model. You'll get a full model of how to measure anything, whatever your boss wants you to measure. So I'm just giving example of happiness. So one category could be, now category could be many, very happy, happy, extremely unhappy, less happy, something like that. But again, I'm giving you a trick. Always remember, whenever you are thinking of measuring an attribute, the easiest way to create a category was presence or absence of that attribute. Presence or absence of that attribute. So happy and unhappy. Happy and unhappy. The easiest way to create a category, although there are multiple ways, as I told you. And then you can count. So right now, let's say I want to measure the happiness of staff in my hospital. No. Staff happiness. I collected data of 100 staff members. 60 are happy and 40 are unhappy. This is a count. I cannot have 60.1 unhappy staff members. It's discrete number. So that is why we call this as discrete data as well. We call it as discrete data. Now, to express the discrete data, we use proportion, or I can also use percentage, is more popular. So proportion is nothing but portion out of 1. So here it is 0.6. If circle represents 1, so this is 0.6 and this is 0.4. Happy and unhappy. And percentages, if you represent the circle, let us say as 100, so this is 60 and this is 40. Percent, cents means 100. Now, this is what is types of data, different types of data, attribute and continuous data. Okay. Now, please understand, when I am collecting continuous data, the most appropriate way to represent the data in graphical format is making a histogram. Like if I take the example of discharge time, histogram looks like historical graph. I've collected the data like discharge time of patients in the last 1 month, 30, 40 patients. Most of the patients, they take 300 minutes. Some patients take 330 minutes also. Some patients take 360 minutes also. Some patients take 300, let's say 90 minutes also. Very few patients. Similarly, some patients take 270 minutes also, 240 minutes also, and 200 minutes. So very few patients go less than. This is the way I am operating today. So most of the patients, 99% of the patients are approximately are being discharged between 210 to 390 minutes. And this graph can be easily obtained. You divide the whole data, minimum and maximum, into around 7 or 8 parts, and then find out how much each part is being represented. How many patients are between 300 to 330, and just put that number here, the frequency, and you will get a histogram. This is known as a histogram. Histogram means historical graph. Yeah. It is collectively showing what was your past performance. Please remember, this x-axis is not a time, not a timeline. It's not that 240s have appearing first and 270s appearing next and 3. No, it is not like that. So histogram is one way of representing the continuous data. But when we represent attribute data, I cannot use a histogram there. I can use a bar chart or a pie chart. Happy, unhappy. Happy is 60, unhappy is 40. Simple, bar chart. Or a pie chart. Proportion indicating 0.6 and 0.4. Or it could be percentage also, as I told you, 60%. Yeah. So whenever it comes to percentage, it is necessarily attribute data, like infection rate. It is attribute data. When I'm saying infection rate is 2%, what does it mean? I'm here, what I'm measuring, the infection rate, infection. What are the categories here? Infected, not infected, isn't it? 2% means what? Infected, not infected. 2 are infected, 98 are not. Total is 100. Exactly. Try to fit in the same format. Right? Error rate. Again, attribute data. Error. You cannot have 7.8 errors, 7 or 8 or 9. It's attribute data. It's discrete data. Okay, just to give you an example, sometimes we get confused with continuous and attribute data. But if it's too elementary, I can proceed further to the different graphical techniques. Or do you want me to explain these basic parts, or we can proceed further? Just let me know. Because some of you have got a good background of quality. If you want me to explain some higher end graphs and charts, control chart systems, process under control, common cause variation, special cause variation, I'll proceed there. Or if you feel I'm going from introductory part to raising the level, that is the right approach, just let me know. As you are answering, let me ask you one question. There are 2 nurses, and they're responsible, let's say they are giving vaccination, right? And on an average, I receive 10 complaints for nurse A and 20 complaints for nurse B every week, let's say, on an average every week. That's too high. I'm just taking an example. 10 for A and 20 for B. Most of us will think that nurse A is better than B. That's what most of us will think, isn't it? But please remember, nurse A having 10 mistakes or 10 complaints or 10 patients feeling pain after the vaccination, let us say. You cannot have 10.1 patients. 10.3 counts is not possible. So when I'm saying complaints, it is actually attribute data. And when you identify this as an attribute data, you will ask about the information about no complaints. What about no complaints? How many are no complaints? So 90, and if I give you this data, in this situation, both nurse A and B proportion of complaints is 0.1 here and here also 0.1 or 10%. Means both are same. The performance is same in terms of, let's say if I'm talking about vaccination, their performance is same, right? So, and I just gave an example. I just chose some easy numbers so that you get an idea. So it is very important to understand what type of data it is. Now, you are not here just to project that discharge time is, average discharge time is this much, and variation is, its range is within this much. You are here to even find the root causes. Why it is low? Why the discharge time is, high? Why the discharge time is high? And how to make it lower. You can take an improvement projects. So before I go to the improvement project part, and before I start applying those tools and techniques using some of the approaches, we can choose any PDSA approach, we can choose Six Sigma approach, we can choose, there are whatever approach you want to choose. I'll come to that. But before that, because some of you are actually wanted to know about control chart, just let me know. How many of you know about, how many of you would like to know about the control chart or the chart, the control chart? Generally 1 or 2 questions are always there in CPHQ. How many of, so Pratiksha is telling yes, okay. They would like to know. Okay, great. So let me explain that part before I go to the problem solving techniques and root cause analysis part. Please understand, every repetitive process follows a distribution, and this is also known as normal distribution, a bell-shaped curve. This was found out by Carl Friedrich Gauss. Carl Friedrich Gauss in the 17th or 18th century, he found that most of the repetitive activities in the nature, they follow a normal distribution, probability curve. So like blood pressure. On an average, you have got a blood pressure, healthy people, right? Are we talking about healthy people? But it's not always 80 or 120. It varies a little bit, but it will not vary too much. Beyond certain limits, it's highly improbable to find a healthy person, beyond certain ranges. Yeah. So Mr. Gauss, he found this. And he also found one interesting phenomena, that every data set has got an average. And every data set has got a standard deviation too. It's very easy to measure standard deviation nowadays. And as a CPHQ professional, you don't have to, although in my CPHQ session, I will tell you the formula of standard deviation, how to calculate it. Even sometimes we even derive the formula. We derive the formula of standard deviation. But I won't do this here because it will take time. But just be aware of the fact the standard deviation can be very easily calculated using Excel sheet also. Put the data into your Excel sheets, or you can use Minitab as well. But if you are interested in knowing about standard deviation and the formula, my team has put up here in the chat box a video which explains the full formula and the derivation of the formula, from where this formula is coming from of the standard deviation. So please, you can watch this. You will also receive an email after this training, you will receive an email which will also give you a link of this particular training program. This program is being recorded, and after some time, you will receive a link of this recording, so you can watch this recording as many times as you want. And plus, you'll also receive some links. I hope my team will be able to send those links which are here. Please send those links so that people who are interested in watching, these, please do that. That is important. And those who are very much in a hurry, they can even copy paste these links, and they are very, very useful links for you. Let me tell you. So coming back, whenever I have a data, I can know the average and I can know the standard deviation. And one of the interesting thing which Mr. Goss, he found that 99%, or to be very precise, 99.73% of the total population from which this sample is drawn lies between plus minus 3 times the standard deviation. Plus minus 3 times the standard deviation. Okay. Very interesting exercise which I do in every class. Now today I'll not be able to do because it's an overview, but when we do a CPHQ session, when I'm teaching average, what is the mean, median, mode, all these things. We go in very much detail: mean, median, mode, range, interquartile range, standard deviation. We even do an exercise. I collect the data of people present in the class, of the heights of people present in the class. And mostly it is around 172, 173, around that range, mostly. So let's say, for the sake of ease of calculations, I say 170 is the average, and I can easily find out. And usually we find the standard deviation lies between 6 to 7, 5, sometimes 5, depends on how much variation is there. But usually it's around, let's say 6. So if I just take an example, just to make my calculations easy, I'm just making my calculations easy. Actually, you should collect the data average. You have to calculate, and the standard deviation is 175. Sorry, standard deviation is 170, only 5. So I can predict about the population of the whole area from which the participants are coming from. If there's a mix of people from all around the world, and let's take an example, like let's assume that people are from all around the world. Average is 170. 1 time standard deviation, 1 time 170 plus 5, isn't it? Becomes 175. 2 times standard deviation becomes 180. The 3 times standard deviation becomes 185. Similarly, here it becomes 160.